The great council chamber stretched across 3 miles of polished crystal floor, and Ambassador Daniel Carter had walked every inch of it during his 5 years of service. The massive dome above showed the swirling colors of 1,000 different worlds, and their representatives sat in curved rows that formed a perfect circle around the central speaking platform. Daniel stood on that platform now with his hands clasped behind his back and his jaw set tight. The air smelled of ozone and exotic spices from 100 different species, and the translation devices hummed softly in everyone's ears. He had prepared for this moment for 6 months, but now that it had arrived, he felt a strange calm settle over his shoulders. The Vrelian ambassador rose from his seat with scales gleaming under the chamber lights. His species looked like upright lizards with 4 arms and eyes that could see in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. He spoke in a series of clicks and hisses that the translator converted into flat, emotionless words. Earth must provide 60% of its military fleet for deployment in the outer rim sectors. The pirate raids have increased and human ships are the most effective against them. This is not a request but a requirement under council law. Daniel listened without expression. He had heard variations of this demand 1,000 times before. The council always needed something from Earth. Ships or soldiers or medical supplies or technology or raw materials or labor. 300 years ago, when humanity first made contact with the Galactic Council, it had seemed like a dream come true. Aliens were real and they wanted to be friends. Earth had rushed to join their grand alliance and humanity had thrown open its doors to share everything it had. The early years were good. Humans learned about faster-than-light travel and energy shields and medical techniques that extended lifespans. Earth's colonies spread across 12 star systems and human children grew up knowing they were part of something bigger than one small blue planet. But slowly and surely the relationship changed. What started as mutual exchange became one-sided obligation. Earth gave and the council took and never seemed satisfied. The Zephon representative stood next. Her people were tall and thin with skin that shifted between blue and purple depending on their mood. She spoke in musical tones that the translator struggled to capture. The medical crisis on Zephon 7 requires immediate assistance. Earth must send 50,000 units of synthetic plasma and 10,000 medical personnel within the next standard month. The cost will be absorbed by Earth as part of its council membership duties. Daniel felt his eye twitch. It was the only sign of his anger. Zephon 7 was the 4th Zephon colony to declare a medical crisis this year. Each time they demanded free help from Earth and each time the council backed them up. Meanwhile, 3 years ago when the Martian plague had killed 2 million humans, the council had debated for half a year about whether to send help. When aid finally arrived, it was outdated medicine that barely worked and came with a bill that Earth was still paying off. The Corthan delegate didn't bother standing. His species looked like walking trees with bark-like skin and branches for arms. His voice came out as deep creaking sounds. Human engineering teams are required on Corthan Prime to construct 17 new orbital stations. Work will begin immediately and continue for no less than 5 standard years. Compensation will be provided in the form of trade credits at rates determined by the Council Economic Committee. That was the final insult that broke something inside Daniel. He knew exactly what those trade credits were worth. The Council Economic Committee always set the rate so low that human workers essentially labored for free. Earth had built infrastructure on 40 different council worlds over the past century and had received almost nothing in return except promises and worthless credits. Daniel took a breath and looked around the chamber. Representatives from 300 species stared back at him with expressions ranging from boredom to contempt. Not one of them saw humans as equals. To them, Earth was useful, a species with clever hands and brave soldiers and a strange willingness to help anyone who asked. The Council had taken advantage of that generosity for 3 centuries and assumed it would continue forever. He pulled a data tablet from his jacket pocket and activated it. The holographic display appeared above his head showing page after page of documents. These are copies of every treaty violation committed by Council members against Earth over the past 100 years. Every promise broken, and every obligation ignored, and every time Earth asked for help and was refused. The Vrelian ambassador told us that pirates in the Outer Rim require our ships. What he didn't mention is that those same pirates attacked a human mining colony last year, and when we asked the Council for help, we were told it was an internal matter that Earth should handle alone. The chamber started. to fill with noise as representatives whispered to each other. Daniel raised his voice and continued. The Zephon want our medical supplies and personnel. 3 years ago, the Martian plague killed 2 million of my people, and the council debated for 6 months before sending obsolete medicine that we had to purchase with money we didn't have. The Corthan want our engineers to build their stations. We have built infrastructure on 40 council worlds and have been paid in worthless credits while our own colonies struggle with outdated facilities. The volume of conversation grew louder. Some delegates were shouting now. The Vrelian ambassador demanded that Daniel show respect for council procedures. The Zephon representative called his accusations inflammatory and baseless. The Corthan delegate simply glared with eyes like black pits in his bark-covered face. Daniel felt a smile cross his lips, and it was not a kind smile. For 300 years, humanity has been a loyal member of this council. We have given our ships and our soldiers and our resources and our knowledge. We have bled and died to protect species who view us as nothing more than convenient servants. We asked for partnership and received only demands. We offered friendship and received only contempt. Today that ends. He touched another control on his tablet and the holographic display changed. It now showed the official seal of the United Earth Government. By the authority granted to me as ambassador, I hereby announce that Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Council effective immediately. All human personnel will be recalled from Council operations within 30 standard days. All human resources currently provided to the Council will cease. All treaties and obligations between Earth and the Council are hereby declared null and void. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates were on their feet shouting in 100 different languages. The translation devices couldn't keep up with the volume of noise. The Vrelian ambassador was screaming threats about economic sanctions. The Zephon representative warned that Earth would be isolated and powerless. The Corthan delegate called humanity ungrateful primitives who would regret this decision. Daniel stood calmly in the center of the storm and let them rage. He had expected this reaction. The council could not imagine that their convenient servants would ever dare to leave. They had become so used to taking advantage of Earth that they believed it was their right. But those days were over. Security forces moved toward the platform, but Daniel raised his hand. I am leaving peacefully. There is no need for drama. He walked toward the exit with steady steps and his head held high. Behind him the shouting continued and threats were hurled at his back. He didn't care. Earth had made its choice, and now the council would have to live with the consequences. As he reached the massive doors that led out of the chamber, Daniel paused and looked back one final time. The council chamber that had seemed so grand and inspiring when he first arrived now looked small and petty. These species had built an alliance based on hierarchy and exploitation, rather than true cooperation. They had assumed humanity would always be there to solve their problems and smooth over their conflicts and provide whatever resources they demanded. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Daniel walked through the doors and they closed behind him with a sound like thunder. In his pocket, his communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Earth. The fleet was ready. The colonies were prepared. Humanity was coming home, and this time, they would forge their own path among the stars. Captain Linda Hayes sat in the command chair of the patrol ship Valiant and watched the stars slip past on the view screen. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Daniel Carter had walked out of the council chamber, and everything had changed. The Valiant was now stationed at the edge of what used to be council space, but was now simply the border between human territory and everyone else. Her orders were clear and simple. Protect human interests only. No more rescue missions for council ships. No more peacekeeping operations. No more playing nursemaid to species that had never respected Earth in the first place. Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat at the sensor station with his eyes fixed on the displays. Captain, we have a distress signal. Zephon cargo vessel under attack by Kartesh pirates. They are calling for help on all frequencies. Linda felt a familiar tug in her chest. 6 months ago, she would have responded immediately. The Valiant would have jumped to the rescue and driven off the pirates and probably received nothing more than a curt acknowledgement from the Zephon captain. But that was before Earth left the Council. That was before she learned exactly how little the Council had valued human sacrifice. Distance and heading. Her voice was calm and professional. Jake checked his instruments. 4 light hours from our position. The Zephon ship has minimal shields and weapons. They will not last long against the Kartesh. Linda remembered the vote 3 years ago when the Martian plague was killing thousands of humans every day. The Zephon delegation had voted against providing aid. They had called it a wasteful use of council resources. Later, when Earth begged for help and offered to pay any price, the Zephon had abstained from the vote entirely. Not even the decency to help, but also not enough courage to outright refuse. Continue on our current course. She said it without emotion. Not our problem anymore. Jake hesitated for just a moment. His fingers hovered over the controls, and Linda knew he was struggling with the same feelings she had. They were both trained to help people in trouble. The uniform they wore meant something. But Earth had helped for 300 years, and what did it get them? Contempt and demands and insults, yes, Captain. Jake entered the commands, and the Valiant continued on its patrol route. Behind them, the Zephon distress calls grew fainter and then stopped entirely. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out 1,000 times. Human ships that had once been the backbone of Council security now ignored calls for help. Human trade vessels that had carried goods to every corner of Council space now stayed in human-controlled systems. The vast network of quantum communication relays that Earth had built and maintained for free began experiencing mysterious technical problems. Human engineers who could have fixed them in hours were no longer available, and Council technicians struggled with technology they didn't fully understand. On the trading station, Outpost 9 merchant ships arrived to find the docking bays half empty. The human freighters that normally filled those spaces were gone. Station Master Quilvin was a Torthan who looked like a walking octopus with too many eyes. He checked his inventory lists and felt something close to panic. The medical supplies he had ordered from Earth were not coming. The replacement parts for the station life support that only human manufacturers made were not coming. The food shipments that fed 30,000 station residents were not coming. He sent urgent messages to his contacts on Earth. The responses were all the same. All contracts with Council entities have been terminated. Earth is no longer accepting orders from Council space. Please direct future inquiries to other suppliers. But there were no other suppliers. Not for half the things the station needed. Quilvin had never realized how much of the Council economy ran on human goods and services, until they suddenly vanished. He was not alone in this discovery. Chancellor Vorin of the Korthan Empire sat in his office on the homeworld and reviewed reports from across Council space. Each one was worse than the last. The Vrelian and Zephon empires were mobilizing their fleets. A border dispute over mining rights in the Kaldor system had erupted into violence. Normally, human mediators would have stepped in and negotiated a peaceful solution. Without them, the two empires were preparing for war. 3 smaller species had been absorbed by larger neighbors in the past month. The Council laws that protected them had always been enforced by human peacekeeping forces. Now there was no one to stop aggressive expansion. Pirate raids had increased 500%. Human patrol ships had kept the space lanes safe for decades. Without them, the raiders operated freely, and merchant vessels were being attacked daily. Vorin's assistant entered the office carrying another data pad. More bad news, Chancellor. The quantum network is failing in 7 sectors. Without human maintenance, the system is degrading faster than our people can repair it. Vorin dismissed the assistant and sat alone in the darkness. He had voted for every measure that demanded more from Earth. He had called them useful servants and had privately joked that humans were like well-trained dogs. Eager to please and easy to command, now the dog had bitten its master and walked away, and the master was discovering that he had forgotten how to do anything for himself. On Nexus Prime, the Council held an emergency session. The great chamber that had once been filled with the sounds of cooperation now echoed with shouting and accusations. The Vrelian ambassador demanded that the Zephon withdraw their fleet from the disputed territory. The Zephon representative screamed back that the Vrelians had no claim to the mining rights. Smaller delegates tried to speak but were drowned out by the larger powers. Security had to be called 3 times to break up physical altercations. A Korthan delegate struck a Vrelian with one of his branch-like arms. A group of Torthan diplomats walked out in protest. The session ended with nothing accomplished except making it clear that without human stabilization, the Council was tearing itself apart. In the military sectors, human absence was even more obvious. Admiral Torvin of the Vrelian fleet reviewed his tactical plans and realized that 70% of them had been designed by human strategists. His own people had become lazy and relied on Earth to do the thinking. Now facing a potential war with the Zephon, he discovered that his officers had forgotten basic tactical doctrine. Training programs across the Council fell apart. Human instructors had trained most of the current generation of Council military officers. Without them, the quality of new recruits dropped sharply. War games that used to run smoothly descended into chaos because no one knew the proper procedures. A Zephon supply ship jumped into the wrong system and collided with an asteroid field. Half the crew died because the navigation officer had relied on human, calculated jump coordinates his entire career and never learned to do the math himself. Chancellor. Vorin finally admitted to himself what he had known deep down for months. Earth had not been part of the Council. Earth had been the foundation that held everything together. Humans had mediated disputes and maintained infrastructure and protected the weak and trained the military and supplied crucial goods and basically run half the galaxy while the Council took credit. He composed a message to President Karen Wells on Earth. It was carefully worded to avoid sounding desperate even though he was. The message acknowledged certain misunderstandings in the past and suggested that perhaps Earth might consider resuming limited cooperation. He offered trade agreements and promised the Council would be more appreciative of human contributions. The response came back within a day. President Wells had clearly been expecting something like this. Her message was short and direct. Earth has no interest in resuming its role as the Council's servant. We gave you 300 years of loyal service and received nothing but contempt. You made it clear we were tools to be used and not partners to be respected. Now you face the consequences of that choice. Find another species to exploit. Vorin read the message 3 times and felt something he had not experienced in his long career. Fear. The Council was collapsing and there was no one to save it because the one species capable of doing so had finally had enough. The Vrelian and Zephon fleets were days away from open warfare. Smaller species were being conquered. Pirates controlled major trade routes. The infrastructure was failing. And Earth did not care. Linda Hayes finished her duty shift and retired to her quarters on the Valiant. She thought about the Zephon ship they had ignored earlier. Part of her felt guilty. Part of her knew it was necessary. Earth had spent 3 centuries saving others while the Council treated them like second-class citizens. That era was over, and if the galaxy had to burn a little before everyone learned respect, then so be it. She pulled up a report on her personal tablet. Human colonies were thriving. Without the burden of Council obligations, Earth could focus on its own people. New ships were being built. New technologies developed. New settlements established. Humanity was finally free to reach its full potential, and the future looked brighter than it had in generations. Admiral Gregory Stone stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters and watched 16 different holographic displays show wars breaking out across the galaxy. 6 months had passed since Earth walked away from the Council, and the predictions had all come true. Species that had lived in peace for centuries were now killing each other. Trade routes that had carried goods safely for generations were now controlled by pirates. The Grand Alliance that had seemed so permanent was crumbling like sand. A junior officer approached with a data pad. Admiral, we have another message from the Council. This one is from Chancellor Vorin himself. Gregory took the pad without much interest. He had read dozens of similar messages over the past few weeks. Let me guess. They want us to come back and fix everything, but they still will not apologize. The officer nodded. That is correct, sir. The Chancellor says it is our duty to restore order. He claims Earth is responsible for the chaos because we abandoned our obligations. Gregory laughed, but there was no humor in it. Responsible. We held that alliance together for 300 years while they treated us like janitors. Now they are angry that the janitor quit, and the building is falling apart. President Karen Wells entered the command center with her security detail. Shiloh. Okayed tired. The past 6 months had been difficult even though Earth itself was doing better than ever. The moral weight of watching the galaxy burn while having the power to stop it was taking its toll on everyone. Show me the latest reports. Her voice was steady, but Gregory could hear the strain underneath. He pulled up the tactical display. The Vrelian Empire and Zephon Confederation are in full-scale war. 17 systems have changed hands in the past month. Casualties are estimated in the millions. The Korthan Empire is expanding into the territories of smaller species who cannot defend themselves. 8 independent colonies have been forcibly annexed. Pirate activity has increased 800%, and major trade lanes are effectively closed. The quantum communication network has failed in 40% of council space. Karen studied the displays with a grim expression. Civilian casualties. Gregory pulled up another screen. Unknown but estimated to be very high. Medical infrastructure is collapsing. Food shipments are not getting through. Refugee movements are creating humanitarian disasters on dozens of worlds, and the council still refuses to take responsibility. Karen made it a statement, not a question. They blame us for everything. According to their latest propaganda, Earth is a rogue state that betrayed the galaxy for selfish reasons. They have not mentioned the 3 centuries of exploitation or the fact that they voted against helping us during the Martian plague. Far from Earth in the deep darkness of the Vortex Nebula, Commander Lisa Grant worked on something that would change everything. Her team of engineers and scientists had been stationed here for 4 months, working on classified projects that even most of Earth government did not know about. The nebula provided perfect cover, and the resources Earth had once wasted on council obligations were now funding research that pushed the boundaries of known science. Lisa floated in zero gravity outside the main construction platform and watched as the final components of Project Horizon were installed. The defensive network, when complete, would make Earth's solar system virtually impregnable. Energy shields that could withstand sustained bombardment from an entire fleet. Weapons platforms that could target ships at ranges the Council had never imagined possible. Sensor arrays that could detect threats before they even entered human space. But Project Horizon was only part of what they were building. Lisa touched a control on her suit and her view shifted to show the shipyards hidden deeper in the nebula. New warships were taking shape. Designs that incorporated technology Earth had developed in secret over the past decade. Faster engines, stronger shields, more powerful weapons. Ships that would make the current Council fleets look like toys. Her second-in-command drifted up beside her. Commander, the final tests are complete. All systems are operating at 112% of projected efficiency. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. Good work, everyone. Earth is going to be very pleased. She did not say what she was thinking, that if the Council ever tried to threaten humanity again, they would discover just how much Earth had been holding back all those years. Back on Nexus Prime, Chancellor. Vorian sat in an emergency council session and watched his life work fall apart. The great alliance he had helped build was dying and he was powerless to stop it. The Vrelian ambassador was screaming at the Zephon representative. 3 smaller delegates had already walked out. Violence had broken out in the gallery between different species. Enough. Voran's voice boomed through the chamber. We are tearing ourselves apart like animals. This is exactly what Earth predicted would happen. The Vrelian ambassador turned his rage on Voran. Then contact them. Bring the humans back. Make them fulfill their obligations. Voran felt very old and very tired. I have tried. President Wells has refused every request. Earth will not return unless we meet conditions that amount to complete surrender of Council authority over human affairs. Then meet their conditions. The Zephon representative said it desperately. We are losing this war. Our fleet has been cut in half. Our colonies are starving. We need human help. The Corthan delegate made a sound like grinding wood. The humans are bluffing. They need the Council as much as we need them. Apply economic pressure. Threaten their trade routes. They will come crawling back. Voran wanted to laugh at the absurdity. What trade routes? Human ships do not enter our space anymore. What economic pressure can we apply when half our economy depended on human goods and services that no longer exist? The humans are not bluffing. They are done with us. A junior aide rushed into the chamber without permission. Chancellor, we have reports of a new threat. Unknown ships have entered Council space in the Outer Rim. They are attacking everything in their path. The chamber fell silent. Voran felt ice form in his stomach. What kind of ships? The aide looked terrified. Nothing we have on record. Technology that appears far more advanced than anything the Council possesses. They destroyed an entire defensive fleet in minutes. The Vrelian ambassador stood. We need to send reinforcements immediately. With what fleet? Voran said it quietly. Half your ships are fighting the Zephon. The other half are scattered across the Empire trying to maintain order. The same is true for every major power in this room. We have no unified defense anymore, because we spent 6 months fighting each other instead of preparing for real threats. On Earth, Admiral Gregory Stone received the same intelligence reports about the unknown ships. He called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. President Karen Wells arrived within minutes and listened as Gregory explained what they knew. The ships match no known design in our database. Their technology level appears to be significantly above current Council capabilities. They are attacking systematically and with clear purpose. This is not a raid or exploration. This is an invasion. Karen looked at the tactical displays showing Council space burning. How long until they reach human territory? If they continue at their current pace and if no one stops them? Gregory paused. 6 months. Maybe less if they accelerate. Karen sat down heavily. The Council cannot stop them. No, they cannot. Gregory said it with certainty. Their fleets are in shambles. Their infrastructure is failing. Their coordination is non-existent. These invaders will roll through Council space like it is not even there, and if we do nothing, they will eventually reach Earth. Karen looked directly at him. Yes, our new defenses are strong, but we do not know enough about this enemy to be certain we can stop them. The safest option is to let them weaken themselves against Council forces and then hit them when they are exhausted. Karen stood and walked to the window that overlooked the city below. Millions of humans going about their lives unaware that the galaxy was on fire. What is the human cost if we wait? Gregory pulled up projections. Conservative estimates suggest the invaders will kill billions of Council citizens before reaching our borders. Entire species may be wiped out, and if we help the Council. Karen asked it already, knowing the answer. We save billions of lives, but we put human soldiers at risk for species that have shown us nothing but contempt. We also give up the leverage we currently have. Once we save them, they will go back to treating us like servants. Karen was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm. I will not order our people to die for a Council that viewed them as expendable, but I also will not let billions of innocent civilians be slaughtered because their leaders were fools. There has to be another way. She turned to Gregory. How many ships can we mobilize in 72 hours? Gregory checked his systems. About 40% of the fleet. The rest are on patrol or in maintenance cycles. Make it happen, Karen said. And get me a direct line to Chancellor Voren. If we are going to do this, it will be on our terms. And the Council is going to learn some very hard lessons about respect. Captain Ryan Foster had been exploring deep space for most of his adult life, and he thought he had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. His ship, the Endeavour, was on a routine mapping mission in the dark space beyond the galactic rim when his sensors started showing readings that made no sense. Energy signatures that should not exist, mass readings that violated known physics, and all of it moving toward Council space at impossible speeds. Lieutenant Sophie Crawford was at the science station, and her face had gone pale. Captain, you need to see this. She pulled up the sensor data on the main screen. We have detected massive dimensional rifts opening in deep space. Something is coming through. Ryan moved to stand beside her and studied the readings. How many? Sophie adjusted the sensors, trying to get a better count. At least 300 distinct signatures. Each one is enormous. The smallest is twice the size of a Council battleship. The largest ones are. She paused and rechecked her readings. The largest ones are the size of small moons. Ryan felt his stomach drop. What species in known space has ships that big? Sophie looked at him with fear in her eyes. None that we know of. This is something new. Get me a visual if you can, Ryan ordered. The crew worked quickly, and within minutes they had a long-range image on screen. What Ryan saw made him understand why the ancient humans had been afraid of the dark. The ships were not ships in any conventional sense. They looked organic, living things that moved through space like predators hunting prey. Their hulls were black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange patterns of bioluminescence pulsed across their surfaces, and there were hundreds of them pouring through the dimensional rifts like a swarm of insects. Record everything and transmit it back to Earth Command immediately. Ryan kept his voice steady even though his hands were shaking. Then plot a course away from here, maximum speed, and keep us hidden. If they detect us, we are dead. The Endeavour slipped away silently while the alien fleet passed them by. Ryan watched on sensors as the massive ships formed into organized groups and began moving toward Council space with clear purpose. This was not exploration or first contact. This was invasion. 3 days later, the first Council world died. The colony on Vexor 4 had 12 million inhabitants and was considered a safe rear area, far from any conflict zones. The alien ships arrived without warning. They did not broadcast demands or attempt communication. They simply opened fire with weapons that tore through planetary shields like they were made of paper. The Colony Defense Force launched every ship they had. 50 frigates and destroyers formed up and charged the invaders with the courage of those who know they are about to die. The alien weapons carved through them in seconds. Energy beams that boiled ships from the inside. Projectiles that seemed to phase through shields and armor. Strange fields that crushed vessels like tin cans. Within 6 hours, Vexor 4 was silent. The aliens had not occupied the planet. They had harvested it, stripped it of resources and people and anything useful, and left behind a dead rock. Then they moved on to the next target. The Council received the distress call in the abrupt silence that followed. Chancellor Voron sent the nearest fleet to investigate. Admiral Corvin of the Zephon military arrived with 75 ships and found nothing but debris and a lifeless world. His sensors picked up the alien fleet moving deeper into Council space. Corvin was a veteran of 30 years and had fought in a dozen wars. He knew a superior enemy when he saw one. All ships jumped to intercept coordinates. Battle formation Delta. Prepare all weapons. The two fleets met in the void between stars. The Zephon ships opened fire at maximum range with everything they had. Missiles and energy beams and kinetic rounds filled space with deadly light. The alien ships absorbed it all without visible damage. Then they returned fire. Corvin watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. His shields failed in seconds. His weapons had no effect. Ships exploded around him as the alien beams found their marks. He managed to get off one message before his flagship died. This enemy is beyond us. We cannot stop them. May the stars have mercy on us all. News of the massacre spread through Council space like wildfire. More fleets were mobilized. The Vrelian Empire and Zephon Confederation ceased their war and turned to face the new threat. The Corthan Empire recalled all its forces from occupied territories. Every species in the Council understood that their internal conflicts meant nothing. If they were all going to be destroyed by this unknown enemy, they called themselves the Kryn, and they had been watching the galaxy for longer than any Council species had existed. They had waited patiently for the right moment to strike. For centuries, the Council had been protected by human diplomacy and human peacekeeping and human military strength. The Kryn had studied humanity carefully and concluded that they were the only real threat. But now the humans were gone, and the Council was weak and divided, and the Kryn saw their opportunity. They would harvest the galaxy one system at a time until nothing remained but themselves and whatever resources they needed. The Council species would be processed into biological material or labor, or simply eliminated as inefficient. On Earth, Admiral Gregory Stone watched the reports coming in from Council space and felt sick. The Kryn were not just winning. They were massacring their opponents. 5 more worlds had fallen. 2 major fleets had been annihilated. The death toll was already in the billions and climbing. President Karen Wells called an emergency cabinet meeting. Every major leader of Earth government gathered in the secure conference room, and the debate began immediately. Admiral Stone wanted to maintain isolation. They made their choice. Let them face the consequences. We cannot risk human lives for species who viewed us as expendable. But Colonel Patricia Moore disagreed strongly. She had spent 20 years working alongside alien soldiers. She had fought beside them and saved their lives, and they had saved hers. I understand the anger. I feel it too. But if the Kryn consume the Council, they will turn to Earth next. We cannot hide behind our borders and hope they ignore us. Secretary of Defense Kevin Turner spoke up. Our new defenses are strong. Project Horizon is nearly complete. We can survive a Kryn assault even if the rest of the galaxy falls. Patricia shook her head. Can we, though? We have never seen this enemy in action. We do not know the limits of their technology. And even if we can survive, do we want to live in a galaxy where every other intelligent species has been exterminated? What kind of future is that? The debate continued for hours. Some argued for isolation and safety. Others argued for intervention despite the risks. President Wells listened to all sides and weighed the impossible choice before her. Finally, she raised her hand for silence. I will not order our soldiers to die for a council that treated them with contempt. But I also will not doom billions of innocent civilians because their leaders were fools. We spent 300 years holding the galaxy together, and we walked away when they showed us no respect. That was the right choice. But this is different. The Kryn are not a political problem or a trade dispute. They are an existential threat to all life in the galaxy, including our own. She looked around the table at each person. We will offer our help, but not as council members. We go in as an independent power. The council will acknowledge Earth as a sovereign nation, with full authority over our own military operations. They will sign a formal treaty recognizing humanity as equals, not servants, and when this is over, we do not rejoin their alliance. We build our own future. Admiral Stone nodded slowly. And if they refuse our terms, then we let them fall and we fortify our borders and we prepare to face the Kryn alone. Karen said it without hesitation. But I do not think they will refuse. They are desperate and we are their only hope. The vote was called. It was not unanimous, but it was clear. Earth would help, but only on human terms. The message went out on all channels simultaneously. President Wells appeared on every screen in council space with her offer. Her conditions were harsh but fair. The council could accept and live or refuse and die. There was no middle ground anymore. Chancellor Voran received the message and read it 3 times. He had no choice and he knew it. The council was losing badly. Another week and the Kryn would control a quarter of their space. Another month and half their species would be extinct. He sent back a one-word reply. Agreed. The human fleet emerged from jump space at the edge of the battle zone and every council species watching held their breath. Admiral Gregory Stone commanded 200 warships that represented the most advanced military force Earth had ever assembled. Ships built in secret using technology that had been developed during the months of isolation. Ships that made the old council vessels look like relics from a forgotten age. Captain Linda Hayes stood on the bridge of the Valiant, which had been upgraded with the new systems. Her crew was tense but ready. They had spent 6 months ignoring council distress calls and now they were rushing to save the same species who had treated them with contempt. The irony was not lost on anyone. Tactical report. Linda kept her voice calm and professional. Lieutenant Jake Morrison studied his displays. Kryn fleet consists of 87 capital ships and approximately 300 smaller vessels. They are attacking the Zephon defensive line at Grid 7-4. Council forces are being pushed back on all fronts. Linda watched the battle unfold on her screens. The Zephon ships were fighting bravely, but they were outmatched in every way. Kryn weapons tore through their shields like they did not exist. Zephon return fire seemed to have minimal effect on the black organic hulls of the enemy. All ships proceed to attack formation. Admiral Stone's voice came through on all channels. Weapons free. Show them what Earth has learned. The human fleet accelerated to combat speed and opened fire. The difference was immediate and shocking. Human weapons had been designed with the Kryn in mind. Energy beams calibrated to frequencies that disrupted their organic hulls. Kinetic rounds that punched through their armor. Missiles that released electromagnetic pulses tuned to interfere with their control systems. Kryn capital ship the size of a small city took 3 direct hits from human railguns and exploded in a burst of purple flame. Another tried to turn its weapons on the human fleet, but found its targeting system scrambled by electronic warfare that the Council had never developed. A third managed to fire, but human shields held where Council shields had failed. Linda brought the Valiant into close range with a group of Kryn destroyers. Her weapons officer had served for 15 years and knew his job perfectly. Fire all forward batteries. Target their power nodes. The Valiant's guns spoke with thunder. Bright lances of energy struck the Kryn ships at precise points where human intelligence had identified vulnerabilities. The organic vessels shuddered and died. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered and went dark. Across the battle space, the same scene repeated. Human ships moved with precision and coordination that came from decades of experience. They had fought as peacekeepers and protectors for 3 centuries. Now they fought for survival and they were magnificent. The Kryn had expected easy prey. They had watched the Council tear itself apart and assumed conquering the galaxy would be simple. They had not expected humanity to return, and they certainly had not expected humans to be so deadly. For the first time since entering Council space, the Kryn fleet began to retreat. Admiral Stone watched the enemy withdrawal and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. All ships maintain pursuit. Do not let them regroup. We end this now. The battle lasted for 6 more hours. The human fleet chased the Kryn across 3 star systems and destroyed over half their invasion force. The survivors fled back toward the dimensional rifts they had come from. But Commander Lisa Grant had prepared for this. Her strike team had been positioned near the rift zones with special equipment designed for one purpose. As the Kryn tried to escape, Lisa gave the order. Detonate quantum charges on my mark. Space itself seemed to scream as the charges went off. The dimensional rifts that connected Kryn space to the galaxy collapsed in cascades of energy. The remaining Kryn ships were trapped on this side with no way home. They fought with desperate fury, but human weapons cut them down one by one. When the last Kryn vessel exploded, Admiral Stone sent a message to all human ships. Ceasefire. Battle is over. We have won. The crew of every human ship erupted in cheers. They had faced an enemy that destroyed Council fleets with ease, and they had emerged victorious. But the celebration was brief. There was still work to do. Captain Linda Hayes brought the Valiant to the Zephon flagship, which was badly damaged but still intact. The same Zephon who had voted against helping Earth during the Martian plague. The same species who had demanded free human medical supplies just months ago. Linda hailed them and offered assistance. Her crew began rescue operations without hesitation. A Zephon officer appeared on her screen looking exhausted and grateful. Thank you, Captain. Without your help, we would all be dead. Why did you come back after everything we did to your people? Linda thought about it for a moment. Because it was the right thing to do. We did not help you because we owe you anything. We helped because billions of innocent lives were at stake and we had the power to save them. The Zephon officer nodded slowly, understanding the lesson humanity was teaching. You are better than us. We see that now, not better, Linda replied. Just different. We believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves, even if they do not deserve it. The war lasted another 8 months, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human forces pushed the Kryn back system by system. Council species who had been enemies days before now fought side by side with human coordination and human tactics. Slowly and steadily, the galaxy was reclaimed. President Karen Wells stood before the reformed Galactic Council, but this time she stood as an equal, not a subordinate. The Council had been humbled by defeat and saved by the species they had exploited. Chancellor Voren and the other leaders listened to her words with new respect. Earth will not be rejoining the Council. We have formed our own alliance called the Terran Federation. Any species that wishes to join us is welcome, but they must accept our terms. We offer true partnership based on mutual respect and shared sacrifice. We do not accept members who expect to be served or who believe some species are superior to others. Dozens of smaller species immediately requested membership. They were tired of being pushed around by the larger powers. They wanted the protection and fairness that humanity offered. Within weeks, the Terran Federation grew to include 40 different species. The old council still existed, but it was diminished. The Vrelian and Zephon empires were weakened by war. The Korthan Empire had lost much of its territory. The smaller species who had once been forced to accept. Council authority now had another option. Admiral Gregory Stone retired from active service and became an instructor at the new Joint Military Academy where humans trained officers from Federation species. He taught them not just tactics and strategy, but the philosophy that had made humanity strong. Protect the weak. Fight with honor. Never exploit those who trust you. Captain Linda Hayes took command of the Federation flagship Unity and led patrols along the borders of the new alliance. She no longer ignored distress calls, but now when she responded, it was to help friends and allies, not ungrateful masters. Commander Lisa Grant continued her work in the Vortex Nebula, developing new technologies. The Federation would never be caught unprepared again. New ships and weapons and defenses were built not for conquest but for protection. On Earth, children learned about the day humanity left the Council and the chaos that followed. They learned about the Kryn invasion and the battles that saved the galaxy. But most importantly, they learned the lesson that their parents and grandparents had paid dearly to understand. Respect must be earned and partnership must be mutual. The galaxy entered a new era. The old Council still held meetings and passed resolutions, but their influence had faded. The Terran Federation grew stronger with each passing year. Species who had once viewed humans as convenient servants now saw them as the leaders they should have been from the start, and far beyond the galactic rim in the darkness of deep space the Kryn licked their wounds and planned. They had been defeated but not destroyed. One day they would return, but when that day came they would face a galaxy united under human leadership. A galaxy that had learned the hard way that cooperation and respect were not weaknesses, but the foundations of true strength. President Karen Wells stood in her office and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, new threats waited, new challenges would arise, but humanity would face them not as servants or subordinates, but as free people standing alongside true allies. Earth had left the Galactic Council, and in doing so had shown the universe what it truly meant to be human. Strong and principled and unbreakable,